ladies and gentlemen. George here, and I'm going to bring to you another video. It's one of these videos that is about planning for success, going over a scenario, showing you a few pointers, and hopefully will make your gameplay of the scenario more enjoyable. So this scenario is called Escape from Success, or Escape from Success. Escape from Encirclement comes from Action Pack 1. Number 43. It's a very interesting scenario. Let's take a look at the scenario card and see if we can wrap our heads around it. And wrap it up like this. And do this. There it is. Escape from Encirclement. So it's a 6-turn scenario designed by Ken Dunn. It's early war, 3rd of August 1941. And basically, it's a typical action where it is the beginning of the Operation Barbarossa. It's in the summertime, and the Germans are having initial successes in their typical tactic where the armor columns go ahead and circle the Soviet forces, followed by the infantry, and you have entire Russian armies either being annihilated or encircled and subsequently surrender. Later in the war, the Russians learn about the German tactics and execute them much more better than the Germans had. So basically, what you have here is a victory condition whereby the Russians win immediately by exiting. They start from the north of this board and exit on the south part of the board. They have to exit 32 VP, excluding prisoners and captured equipment off the south edge. In order to do that, though, prior to setup, the Russian player picks which one of these groups will enter first, which one will enter on this turn 2, and which one will enter on turn 4. And there's 2 areas where they can enter. Exactly. So they start off board, and when the Russians come in on board, they're only starting with half of their movement point slash movement factors. So for example, if you have group A coming in on turn 1, they'll pick one of the 2 areas where they can come in, not both. And they, instead of coming in with 2 movement factors, they'll come in, instead of coming in with 4 movement factors, they'll come in with 2. Conversely, the little armor column here will have to use platoon movement, and instead of having 12 movement points, they'll have 5. And in the case of the other tankette, it will only be 5 instead of 11. Yeah, and same thing goes for the cavalry, even if they enter on turn 4. Important point here is that the Germans may freely deploy, and they also have 8 dummy counters. So let's go to the board, if we may, and take a look at the terrain. Big overview. Let me turn to that in a second. Okay. Well, here's a big overview of the board. And let's turn to our writing tool and ink color, bright red. So here's the first area right here. It'd be helpful if you can write right there. And here's the second area. What's important to note is some of these areas have terrain that can act as cover. And the other important thing about it is it's concealment terrain. The same thing holds for this area here and this area here. And you can also go here. Now, typically what the Russian player does is they try to enter at this edge, try to enter at this edge, and go out off the board over here. Do they always succeed? Perhaps not. Now, the German players, however, the German player, let's change the ink color, are restricted to they're restricted to setting up in this area here. The half X's are not allowed because typically they're not allowed here. And the same thing holds true for this baby here. They're restricted. Where's my pen? This is great. Oh, there it is. Right here. No half hexes. Keep in mind, the other thing the Russian player can do is, come in here and go sideways, right? All depending on how you set up. Now, typically, let's see if we can erase. We should be able to erase. Eraser. Let's erase some of this stuff. Typically, what happens with the German player is pen and ink. There you go. What happens with the German player is they would like to set up in an area whereby they can react in such a fashion where if the player decides to do, the Russian player decides to do this, they can rapidly mobilize and put in the squeeze like this. So more on that in a jiffy in terms of the map and planning. Now let's go to the actual map and let's do a deeper dive into the type of forces that you have and the type of choices that you face as either player. Let's do that. There you go. Gee, that was quick. So here's the German OB. And you got six squads for, let's zoom in a bit. 6 squads for this side of the board and 6 squads for the other side of the board. Okay. And the remainder of the forces, which are here, including the dummies, can stack in either flank, depending on what you would like to do. So in this case, you have 2 guns and you have 4 leaders. And what I do is I usually divide them equally. 1 flank, 2 equal flanks. So 3 leaders each, and they each get a platoon, more or less. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, and 3. All fine and dandy. The crews go with the guns. And then let's split everything up in terms of the support weapons. ATR. Keep in mind that the ATRs and the MGs are effective against light tanks. Okay, now keep in mind now, while we're setting up the Germans, the Soviet player has already decided where each group and at what time of the game turns each group will come in. So let's take a look at the left flank first. As you can see, this area here represents a lot of open ground. It's an excellent opportunity for the Soviet player to run across and escape and gain 15 or so victory points if you're not playing the game carefully. However, what I'm suggesting here, well, this guy belongs on the other side of the board, a 9-1 leader for each flank. What I'm suggesting here is if the Soviet player were to decide such a thing, um, where would we best keep the AT gun? The best location I have noted would be here, because typically you can bore sight it to this X. So maybe you do have two or three um, hindrances here. Let's see how many we do have in any case. And let's say three hindrances. With a bore sight, it's a +1. With motion, another +2. And even at that, you can even things out or level the field um, by putting a leader here and having him direct the fire. Um, just the same though, that's one of the areas that I found to be conducive to um, victory. And the other thing that I'd like is that I suggest, if you don't care to have a leader stack there, is having an MG here. And the reason why would be, is it here or there? Here. It would be because you had cover this area here and you bore sight this location. And likewise, you can also bore sight here. And it does have some advantages to having that. Now, the other thing that I would suggest is that having a rapid deployment force. So what does a rapid deployment force consist of? It's probably a squad with a LMG. Um, that's two different hexes that they can fire off of, and three if you're using three if you're using spraying fire. With a 8-1 leader, the reason why I pick a leader with a negative modifier is because a negative modifier helps in terms of sustaining your unit morale, keeping him alive, and keeping him effective. Let's put a crew with this thing. All right. Now, I would deploy at least one squad in order to take advantage of being able to fire a mortar with one squad. Okay? And then the other squad can have an AT gun. And if this fellow is here, this AT gun has a 12 hex range with a 1 firepower factor to be used against infantry. And whatnot. Now, you would also want to cover this flank, put a little squad here. And the other thing that you may consider is having a little reserve as well. Keep in mind that these fellows can also set up in entrenchments if they are in entrenchment terrain. Now let's look at the right flank. Obviously, I wouldn't put all my eggs in one basket, so one gun goes on one side and the other one goes on the other. Excellent place to place the gun would be here. Again, you can bore sight, not there, but oops. Let's go like this. There you go. Again, you can bore sight this location if they so. And if they decide to come over here, switching it around is easy breezy. Let's put them back. Oops. All right. Again, you have your rapid deployment force down here. But it is difficult to get across this board because of all the terrain. Give him an LMG. It's up to you whether you want two squads or not. Deploy one squad, at least one squad for, special forces, special operations for the mortar and the ATR. Half squad, clone, and you can have a mortar perhaps here, an AT gun there, and then your MG could be situated in another location where they can, you know, cover and put down some residual fire or fire lanes. And again, you can have a force that can feint an attack here, or another rapid deployment force, maximum of 8 hexes going CX. There you go. Now, as for the Russians, you have basically 3 groups. The first group is composed of only infantry. This is like a mechanized column, and this is cavalry. Let's take just one group here, for example. Okay, let's take one group, and let's not forget that the 8-0 leader can be replaced by a commissar. Let's put some units on the board, and obviously we're going to conceal them. All right, and these boys come in here. I would put the lowest movement factor tank first. They have a LMG. If they don't target this fellow, they're going to have a tank rolling around with a machine gun. Anywho, don't forget they start concealed. And whichever group might come in, will start concealed. And if they're in concealment terrain, nobody has an LOS to them, they maintain concealment. Now, here's the other trick, is that they have to come in with, considering that half of their movement factors / movement points have been expended, but they don't have to come in during the movement phase. They can come in during the advance phase. So if they come in during the advance phase, then they don't have they don't give the opportunity for the Germans to attack them, and they simply come in on board. In the following turn, if they survive any German attacks, they start running. That is not afforded on the for the armored fighting vehicles, but let's do the armored fighting vehicles for a moment. All right, so let's say that they only have 5 movement factors, movement points. 1, 2, let's align them. 2, 3, 4, 5, and they remain in motion. And you're rolling. Now, of course, the German player is going to react to that, but he doesn't know where your other forces are going to come in. However, if you pick to get in on the movement phase and you assault move to there, and then you can advance and you're here. Either way, you know, you've what's the difference? What's the cost in terms of versus going CX and trying to go in there and stripping yourself of concealment? It will force the Germans to react in such a way where they will have to fire. Now, for your cavalry, they can come in, right? They should come in open ground, if possible, and advance in again the following turn, when they survive any fire, they can do a cavalry charge, or they can do another charge. Now you're going to ask yourself, okay, so what else can the Russians do? Remember the movie Run Forrest Run, or Forrest Gump? Keep in mind that if you stick around and start a shooting match, you'll lose as the Russian player. Surefire bet. You have to run. You only have 6 turns. Now, having said that, let's also look at the roar data for the scenario. Yeah, so let's look at the roar data. That's where we're at. Let's see, where did I get the roar data from? Here. Now you're going to tell me, George, why are you showing me a scenario that's so unbalanced? Let's see. Hold on a second. Encircle this. Escape from encirclement. MNOP. MNOP. Oh, the way I like to do it is like this. Escape. Encirclement. There it is. Escape from encirclement AP43. Russian 16 to German 6. So there's really a 2-to-1 favor of the Russians, but I can assure you the people that won this game as the Germans played their dice correctly, played their cards correctly, and they won. So it is winnable. Now, to recap on all the points that I wanted to cover, I'm not going to stop my slides here. 2 more slides just to recap all the important points so we all get it. And perhaps when you play the scenario, you'll have some ammunition up your sleeve, you'll play it, and you won't feel jaded. Now, the scenario designer is a fellow by the name of Ken Dunn, and I've done some loosely associated work with Ken Dunn, and I can tell you he's a phenomenal designer. He's a phenomenal designer. So I cannot say that that this is not a fun scenario. It is. So let's go circle back to my PowerPoint here and see what pointers I have for you. All right, German tactics. Let me get rid of my video capture for a moment. Do not forget to bore sight. I mentioned briefly in my overview with the bore sighting. Deploy and use the concealment to thwart. You got 8 dummies. Use them to cover your flanks or to make the Soviet player think twice as to where your actual units are. Use leaders with a negative modifier as quick mobilization teams. So remember, leaders have 6 movement factors as opposed to 4. 8 if they go CX. So those folks will be your insurance of getting some forces to close the gap, because there is a gap available to them. Is the gap too wide? Perhaps. But anywho, AT rifle have 1 firepower at 12 hex range. So what I'm saying with that is that, okay, you got a maximum range of a regular squad of 12 hexes. There is a gap that these Soviets can exploit. And if you're half squadding to have 1 squad, half squad man and motor, you might as well use the other half squad with the AT gun, because with the AT gun you got 12 hexes. And 1 firepower factor to cover some open ground that you otherwise leave open. MGs can take care of lightly armored fighting vehicles, and the MGs, if you do not put them in woods or a building, do not have to fix their covered arc, and with a rate of fire of 2, They can make quick uh, work of any armored fighting vehicle with that is lightly armored and comes close to them. Now, I won't leave you shortchanged. Here is Russian tactics. Run, Forest, run. I'm mentioning it twice. This is key to winning the scenario as the Russian player. If you sit around and engage in a firefight or look for a firefight, you're going to lose against the 468 squads that are well armed with machine guns, light machine guns, and -1 liter modifiers to the tune of 4 liters with negative modifiers and 2 with no modifier whatsoever. Advance onto the board initially using concealment or assault move onto the board. Do not lose your concealment in the initial turn. The initial turn you can only use in the initial turn. In the turn that forces embark onto the board, Soviet forces embark onto the board, they have half MP, half MF. Therefore, take advantage of concealment, and the next turn, do your stuff. Do not forget about Human Wave and Cavalry Charges or the Cavalry Wave. Well, with Human Wave, there's, I guess, less restrictions than the Cavalry Wave, and there's more advantages in terms of the morale. Having said that, if the Germans get some lucky rolls and rate, it's not conducive to success. However, if the Germans do not spread the fire between MG fire and inherent firepower or cower and do not get raped, then you can be rest assured, due to the sheer numbers of Russians versus Germans, the Russians will succeed. Take advantage of point of entries with cover, and that's points that I showed you earlier on in this presentation. And again, let's just circle back to the replacing of 8.0 and 8-1 liters with commissars. Remember here, commissars do have special abilities of rallying units and getting them off board. However, if you replace an 8-1 liter, you're losing 1 VP because a 8-1 liter is 2 VP or a commissar is 1 VP. And the flip side to that is if you do have a commissar, the units stacked with them are not subject to DM. They will rally much more quicker because their morale is increased by 1. And as long as they're not conscripts, you can try and rally them until they are reduced to conscripts, in which case they start casualty reducing because they cannot reduce any longer anymore. That was a long presentation, about 30 minutes. Here I am, back again. Ladies and gentlemen, thanks for watching. You can always watch my videos at double speed or 1.5 speed. To be perfectly honest, when I watch No Enemies Here, and I watch them from beginning to end, those videos are about an hour long, I watch them at 1.5 speed, and I watched Dan speed reading everything, all good stuff. Like I said before, I hope you enjoyed this video. Like and subscribe. Do tell your friends about this channel. Word of mouth is the best way of spreading it, spreading the word, and spreading the love. And hopefully I'll be back next week with some interesting stories or playthroughs and whatnot about the best game in the entire world, about the best tactical war game in the world, Advanced Squad Leader. Take care.